Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you want to get into complex ideas, but maybe without feeling totally overwhelmed.
And that's what we do. We unpack things.
Exactly. So today, we're diving into excerpts from Meetings with Remarkable Men.
Right. It's framed as, the second series of writings from this individual, looking back on life, the people encountered.
And it sounds like he encountered a really diverse range of people and experiences.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think of it like a tour through a pretty unique mind. It's
Yeah.
not just like a collection of nice stories.
Now.
No, he tackles some big questions. Human nature, society's values,
Wow.
especially things like, literature, modern life.
He saw a lot then. Philosophy, business.
All of it, across a huge landscape, too.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive.
Mm.
Let's try and extract the core observations.
Yeah. What did he actually learn about people? What did he value? What did he criticize?
And crucially, what made someone remarkable in his view? We'll be looking for those specifics.
Those examples, those surprising little details that might just, make you see things a bit differently.
Okay, where should we start?
Well, maybe with something foundational he brings up early on, this allegory of the wolf and the sheep.
An allegory. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just some quaint little story. It really sets the scene. He presents the wolf as like our fundamental functioning.
And instincts, reflexes.
Exactly, the core immediate stuff, that reflex part of us.
Okay, so wolf is instinct. And the sheep.
The sheep represents feeling, our emotions.
Right. Gut reaction versus heart, maybe.
Sort of. But here's the interesting bit for, anyone listening. He doesn't see them as things to fight against or suppress.
No. Usually it's mind over matter, right?
Well, his ideal, what he calls man, the individual, is about integrating them, wolf and sheep together.
How?
Through conscious effort, intentionally bringing instinct and feeling into, let's say, harmony.
Okay, so not picking one, but blending them.
Precisely. And he even hints this integration connects us to something bigger, something prepared from above.
That's interesting. It makes you think how often we lean one way or the other, logic or emotion.
Yeah, this is a call for something more whole, more integrated inside.
Okay, so from that foundation, where does he go next? It seems like he takes a pretty sharp turn towards critiquing literature.
He does. And this is something that might feel pretty relevant today with all the information overload. He talks about meeting an elderly Persian who had a very, let's say, blunt take on a lot of contemporary writing.
Blunt how?
He called it word prostitution.
Wow. Strong words.
Very. The idea was that literature had become obsessed with the surface. The polish, the style.
Looking good, sounding good.
Right. But lacking real depth of thought, lacking exactness in conveying ideas, like a fancy box, but nothing inside.
So all style, no substance. Is that the idea? And he connects this to language itself, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He argues that the way modern languages are structured, their sort of artificial grammars actually get in the way. They hinder the precise transmission of thought. He gives this example, mian diarim, it means, I say, and how hard it was to find a perfect Russian equivalent.
So the tools we use shape the thought.
That's the question it raises, definitely. How much do our languages limit or channel how we think and communicate? It's fascinating when you consider it.
And what's the consequence, in his view, of this focus on, well, the superficial in writing? Why is it such a problem?
Well, if you link it back to the wolf and the sheep, the argument is this over-focus on intellectual thought.
The man part, maybe, but disconnected.
Kind of, yeah. Disconnected from genuine feeling, from instinct. He thinks it leads to this societal imbalance. Literature, for him, had lost its soul.
And that's a reflection of a bigger problem in civilization.
That's how he saw it. He felt real literature should nourish the whole person, mind, feeling, instinct, develop the whole being.
He contrasts this with older literature,
Right.
suggesting it had more power.
Yeah, he believed older stories, wisdom traditions, passed down, they held a kind of distilled essence of human experience.
Unlike modern stuff, which he saw as what?
As focusing on what he called the prolonged malady of modern people.
Melody. Like sickness.
Yeah, like their inner weaknesses, their anxieties, their lack of vitality. He mentions the conversation of the two sparrows, an Eastern tale.
Does he tell the story?
Not in detail here, but the point is these older, maybe simpler forms could actually convey deep truths more effectively than fancy but ultimately empty modern writing.
It's interesting, too, that he observed people in Asia, isolated from modern civilization, seem to have a more developed sense of feeling. It's kind of statement.
It is bold, but it connects back. His idea is that those less touched by this, let's call it modern artificiality, kept a stronger link to their emotional core.
Which he saw as a deeper kind of common sense.
Kind of, yeah. As if modern life, with its distractions and focus on surfaces, had sort of dulled our natural instincts and feelings.
And that leads to why Asian readers apparently started losing interest in European novels after initially liking them.
Well, according to the Persian he spoke with, those novels were just full of descriptions of that very malady.
The anxieties, the indecision.
Exactly, all the malaise of modern folks. And for readers who maybe had a more direct, emotionally vibrant life, reading endless descriptions of weakness just got, well, boring. Maybe even depressing.
Huh. It makes you wonder what kinds of stories truly resonate universally and why.
It does.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful critique of modern culture seen through its writing. But let's pivot to the remarkable men themselves. His father is the first one, Adash. What made him remarkable?
Yeah, his father was clearly a huge early influence, a spiritualizing factor, he calls him. Not a professional poet or anything.
But an amateur Ashok,
Oh,
a storyteller.
Exactly, a narrator. And he had this profound impact through the legends, the wisdom he shared.
He mentioned specific stories like the flood before the flood, Gilgamesh. Why those?
They weren't just tales. The father used them to connect different traditions, linking the Sumerian Gilgamesh epic to, say, Bible stories of the flood.
Suggesting a common source.
Right, a shared wellspring of human wisdom. And the fact that these stories were passed down by Ashoks for generations, mostly unchanged, really struck the author. It showed the enduring power of certain truths, certain archetypes.
And there's that lovely image. God being in Sarikamish making ladders for happiness.
It's wonderful, isn't it? It just shows the father's knack for making big spiritual ideas simple, relatable. Sarikamish had tall trees, so it becomes this metaphor.
For God actively helping people find well-being.
Yeah, individuals, even nations. It's a very grounded, hopeful picture.
His father also had this clear life philosophy. 4 commandments for what? Inner freedom and a happy old age.
Yeah, and they're surprisingly down to earth. Love your parents, maintain chastity, which probably meant more than just physically, like purity of intent.
Okay.
Be outwardly courteous, but inwardly free, don't trust too easily, and love work for its own sake. Find joy in the doing.
So strong ethics, good relationships, purpose.
Pretty much. Fundamental stuff.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing for the father, financially speaking.
Yeah.
He had losses. How did that shape things?
That's important, yeah. Being remarkable doesn't mean easy street. The father faced big financial hits, lost herds, a failed workshop.
They had to move.
Yeah, to cars. But this probably just reinforced his focus on inner values, on resilience. It likely showed his son the importance of inner strength when things get tough externally.
And the father instilled these persistent pursuits in him, cultivating indifference to negative feelings, fear, fastidiousness. That sounds like training.
It really does, like deliberate mental conditioning. Think about it. How often do we get snagged by anxieties that don't actually help us?
All the time.
So this was about proactively building emotional resilience, learning to detach from negativity. That early training must have been invaluable later on.
Did the father have any, memorable sayings, proverbs?
Oh yeah, several. They give you a real flavor of his practical wisdom, often with a bit of humor.
Like?
Well, if you are first, your wife is second. If your wife is first, you had better be 0. Only then will your hens be safe.
Ah, okay, a bit of domestic commentary there.
Or the chuckle, yeah. And then maybe more cynical. If you wish to be rich, make friends with the police.
Oof. A bit more pointed.
Shows a sharp eye for human nature, the realities of life, maybe power structures.
Okay, so that's the father. Then there's Dean Borsch, his first tutor, a different kind of influence.
Very different. He calls him a factor for the secondary stratum of his individuality, like another layer distinct from the father's foundational impact.
Gene of the Car's military cathedral. Sounds important, but also solitary.
Yeah, kind of a recluse.
Yeah.
Dedicated to his studies, astronomy, chemistry, but also music, composing sacred works.
Science and art. Interesting mix.
Paints a picture of a mind seeking understanding through both reason and, artistic expression. His advice for the author was to study medicine.
Why medicine?
To heal the body, but also act as a confessor for the soul. A holistic view, really.
He also had some, let's say specific ideas about human development. Timelines, needing an opposite sex type, seems a bit dated now.
The specifics, maybe, but what's interesting isn't necessarily the theory itself. but that he was trying to figure out the patterns.
Trying to understand what shapes us.
Exactly. Grappling with identity formation, development, even if his conclusions were based on the science of his day, it shows that drive to understand.
But he wasn't so open to everything. The author's interest in spirits, he dismissed that.
Completely called it nonsense. He was very much about logical, scientific explanation.
What was his reasoning?
He argued, well, if spirits had real power, why bother with silly stuff like table tapping? It shows that rational skepticism. A different kind of remarkable mind compared to the father, maybe. One grounded in reason.
Then there's Pogossian. Seems more down to earth.
Yeah, a contrast to the dean. Pogossian was sociable, kind, respected, shared lodgings with someone less refined, suggesting he wasn't pretentious.
It's just a friendly guy.
Yeah.
Different personalities influence us differently.
Right. Absolutely. And while the text doesn't say Pogossian was involved in the author's early explorations of unusual stuff, having that kind, trusted figure around probably created a safe space for the author to be curious, to observe things, including the unconventional. His house was a backdrop.
Okay, let's talk about Alexandropol, the duck hunting trip, and the Yazidis who couldn't leave a drawn circle. That's bizarre.
It's one of those anecdotes that really jumps out, doesn't it? Experiencing that firsthand, this seemingly impossible thing, it clearly shook him, made him rethink his ideas about these people.
And he tried to verify it later.
Yeah, he mentions experimenting later and confirming it somehow. It really underlines his need to observe directly, to challenge assumptions.
Then there's that drinking session in Kars, the deacon calling the Yazidis devil worshippers who had limited independence just for appearances.
Right, that gives the other side. The local folklore, the prejudice. The deacon's explanation, probably based on misunderstanding, shows how beliefs shape how we see weird behavior. Exactly. Multiple ways to explain the same thing, often conflicting.
And the belief about an evil spirit entering a dead body. It seems like these encounters with the unexplained were just part of the fabric of life back then.
It paints a picture of the world he grew up in, this rich mix of beliefs, superstitions. For him, it likely fueled that lifelong quest to understand reality beyond just the obvious conventional stuff. The line seemed blurrier then.
The bit about the honor codes Makarov the officer versus Ivanov the shoemaker regarding debt, what does that tell us?
It's a neat little social commentary. Shows how values like honor were tied to class. Huge consequences for the officer, probably none for the shoemaker.
So honor wasn't universal.
It could be very relative, depending on your station.
Okay, then his friendship with Pogossian. This seems like a turning point, deepening his spiritual searching.
Absolutely. Pogossian from the seminary becomes this key companion. They're seriously looking into the supernatural now, not just curiosity.
They started visiting monasteries, holy places.
Yes. Actively exploring religious traditions, seeking answers. It makes you think about those moments in life that really shift your focus, you know?
Yeah. And the story about the miraculous icon during the drought in Kars. What's the takeaway there?
Well, it shows the power of faith, of collective belief. Whether it was a miracle or coincidence, the perception that the icon brought rain was powerful. It probably reinforced his interest in things beyond purely rational explanation.
This search for ancient knowledge then leads them to Ani, the ruined city.
Right, the city of 1,000 churches. It's like a physical journey into the past, trying to connect with lost wisdom.
A potent symbol given its history of destruction.
Exactly. It highlights how fragile cultural knowledge can be, how much can be lost. They wanted to unearth some of that.
And then the discovery. Ancient parchments, Father Arm mentioning the Sarmon Brotherhood. That must have felt huge.
Oh, definitely. A massive jolt of excitement. This brotherhood was legendary, supposedly holding profound secrets. Finding their name felt like cracking a code.
A path to the knowledge they were after.
That was the hope. Of course, like with many quests, the reality turned out to be, well, more complicated.
They thought the Brotherhood might be linked to the Azores near Mosul. Why?
Their research suggested the parchments might be from a time when the Azores were displaced. They found a place name, Nivsi, linked it to ancient Mosul.
Where the Azores lived then.
Right. And where descendants still lived. So it seemed like a possible historical connection, a piece of the puzzle anyway.
But getting there wasn't easy. The trip towards Maush, disguises, the Kurd sheepdogs. Sounds rough.
It really emphasizes the practical dangers. That dog story is interesting, though. Just sitting down averted the attack.
Like an intuitive move.
Maybe. Shows that kind of practical knowledge was as important as anything else. And yeah, disguises, river crossings, it was complex.
And then something unexpected happened. An accident that changed their plans. It's just hinted at.
Yeah, the lack of detail makes you focus on the impact. Life's unpredictable, plans change, you need to adapt. That seems to be the point.
Along the way, people wanted the parchment. A stranger offered money, a prince wanted to copy it,
Shows it was seen as valuable, right? Maybe for its history, its secrets, its potential power. Knowledge, especially hidden knowledge, is often sought after.
and then help from English sailors in Constantinople. Out of the blue.
Pure serendipity, it seems, just shows how random encounters, kindness from strangers, can completely change your course.
Then the old man in the workshop.
Hmm.
Conscious work versus being a Karabakh ass. That's memorable.
It really is the difference between just going through the motions like the ass, compelled to work.
And working with intention, awareness.
Exactly, bringing your mind, your spirit to what you do, not just your body. It's a great message about how we approach our own work, our lives.
Then the author himself starts doing all sorts of jobs, plaster casting, selling painted sparrows. Quite a shift from seeking ancient wisdom.
It shows his other side, right? Resourceful, adaptable, not just a scholar, but someone who could make his way in the world, learn by doing. These experiences surely taught him a lot about people.
Even living simply in New Bukhara, influenced by yogis.
Yeah, the philosophical curiosity never left. Trying out an ascetic lifestyle, exploring different ways of being, seeking inner peace, even if it was temporary.
What about the Jerusalem artichoke? It's such a random detail.
Maybe that's the point. A little touch, the unexpected, the unexplained. Not everything needs a grand meaning. Just part of the texture of life.
And the dog, Philos, the cinematographer, little slices of daily life.
Yeah, glimpses of the personal side, the loyal dog helping someone out with his skills. It grounds the bigger quest in everyday reality.
The Easter with Soloviev sounds kind of sad, though.
It does emphasize a sense of isolation, maybe being far from home, from familiar things, part of the sacrifice of living such unconventional lives.
And Soloviev turning up later with a dodgy deal.
Yeah, that adds complexity. Shows people you share intense experiences with can still go down different roads, make questionable choices, highlights the contrast in their paths.
Okay, then the journey to the monastery. Blindfolded travel, memorizing Tibetan. Sounds intense.
It really signifies his commitment, doesn't it? Willing to undergo pretty extreme methods to get this knowledge, the secrecy, the focus on internalizing.
Suggests a different kind of learning.
Very much so. Direct experience, not just observation.
Finding Prince Lubovedsky again, but ill after he'd vanished, must have been emotional.
Absolutely. The unexplained departure, then finding him like that, it would surely deepen the bond, make them appreciate the connection, life's fragility.
And the old man there, questioning the nature of curiosity, self-knowledge. That theme keeps popping up.
It does. It's a challenge. Is just gathering external knowledge enough? Or is the real goal self-awareness, looking inward, not just outward?
Lubovedsky recovers and becomes a guide himself.
Yeah, that shows a renewed purpose, a deeper commitment to their shared quest. He goes from companion to collaborator, shared experience strengthening the bond.
The monastery had that strange apparatus for teaching sacred dances.
Yeah.
The women's court.
Fascinating detail, using movement, space to embody and transmit wisdom. The dances weren't just performances, they were like a living language for the monks.
And the prince's premonition of death, their last talk.
A very profound moment, likely. The end of a major relationship, prompting reflection on life, death, the bonds they'd formed. His acceptance is quite moving.
Then the Gobi Desert Expedition. Excavating a buried city sounds incredibly tough.
Just shows their relentless drive, doesn't it? Undeterred by extreme conditions, huge ambition, huge commitment to finding lost knowledge.
Dr. Sariogli finding a limit to the sand in the atmosphere, a little scientific nugget amidst the adventure.
Yeah, shows that even on these esoteric quests, they were still observing the natural world, still curious scientifically.
And Yelov, the philologist's very short report.
A bit of comic relief. Shows the different personalities involved. Sometimes the big discovery is nothing much.
Having to pretend Professor Skridlov was a merchant.
Underscores the need for discretion, maybe the dangers involved. A necessary bit of cunning, perhaps, to protect their work and themselves.
The wild camels, cooking with dung. Resourcefulness again.
Absolutely. Improvising, using whatever's available, even in the most barren place. Pogossian's ingenuity there really stands out. Survival skills were key.
Backtracking a bit, his early life in Constantinople, learning to dive, returning the lost chaplet. Seems like he was just soaking everything up.
Yeah, eager to engage with life in all its forms, physical challenges, social interactions, building that foundation.
And a Persian dervish on eating properly, artificial breathing. Echoes the earlier stuff about Authenticity.
Definitely. Aligning with natural rhythms, avoiding the artificial, it reinforces that theme of seeking a more grounded, genuine way of being, physically and mentally.
Ikenbe's fake fortune-telling using suggestion.
Shows the author's sharp eye for psychology, doesn't it? How easily people can be influenced, how suggestion shapes perception.
And then planning to use hypnosis with Ikenbe to make money.
Huh.
A bit dodgy.
Well, it certainly shows his pragmatism, willing to use unconventional, maybe even questionable means to fund his goals. A glimpse into the sometimes murky world of performance and persuasion.
And that intense boyhood story. The rivalry. The duel at the artillery range.
Wow. It's incredibly dramatic. Shows the sheer intensity of youthful emotions, the recklessness, but also how near tragedy can transform things.
Going from hatred to a brotherly bond.
Exactly. Shared trauma, pity, leading to a deep connection. Shows the capacity for change, for growth.
And Karpenko, the rival, later engaged with the author's ideas.
Yeah, suggests that even fierce early conflict doesn't have to prevent later respect, intellectual connection. People evolve.
His later travels seem full of these philosophical moments, maps being misleading, talks with nomads, bumping into people from his past.
It all reinforces that idea. True learning comes from direct experience. Engaging with the world, with people. Every encounter holds potential insight.
Like meeting the Azunavoran in Afghanistan, and another remarkable individual.
Seems so. A spiritual seeker, diverse background, committed to inner exploration, detachment. Another example of that deep dedication he admired.
And the continued travels with Lubovedsky and Professor Skridlov, forming a close bond with the professor.
Those sustained relationships were clearly vital. Support, companionship, shared discovery, they deepen understanding.
The idea of a natural attraction between different tribes, despite surface dislikes. Interesting thought.
It hints at a deeper human unity, doesn't it? Something instinctual that can override cultural conditioning or prejudice.
Living as pseudo-dervishes with Skridlov near Merv.
Another example of experiential learning. Stepping outside their own framework to understand another way of life, another spiritual path from the inside.
The Amudarya trip. The old Sartre losing money because of them.
Shows how ingrained cultural norms can have real, sometimes unfair consequences. Highlights the complexities of navigating different ethical systems.
And the Greek monk talking about a world brotherhood, uniting different faiths.
That must have resonated deeply with someone on his kind of quest. Suggests a universal truth beneath different religions. And Father Giovanni's point about understanding versus just knowing.
Inner state affecting perception.
Right. Emphasizes inner experience over just piling up facts.
Okay, finally, let's get to Mr. Gurdjieff's own take on his money. He addresses the listener, acknowledges the rumors.
Yeah, he knew people were curious, telling wild stories, occult links, black magic, philosopher's stone, Bolshevik gold, all sorts of things.
He calls the listener esteemed doctor.
Yes, a direct address sets a personal tone. And he says he wants to shear the dollar-fattened audience with the truth, typical Gurdjieff humor there.
But his main point is needing material independence for his work. Why was that so critical?
He felt he needed freedom. Freedom from wealthy patrons influencing him. Freedom from having to compromise his teachings to make money. Financial autonomy meant integrity for his work.
And he backs this up by talking about his business past. Ear tubes, sewing machines, corsets, herring. It's quite a list.
It really is. Shows his practical side, his shrewdness. He could spot an opportunity, make things work financially in all sorts of ways. Resourceful.
His interest in dolmens archaeology seems like a constant thread, though.
Yes, despite all the business ventures, that deeper curiosity about ancient mysteries never went away. It wasn't just about the money.
Surviving between the Bolsheviks and White Army lines. That takes some doing.
Incredible resilience, adaptability, maybe intuition, street smarts as much as strategy. He even mentions feeling some unseen goodwill helping him.
But it wasn't all success. He hit hard times too. Tiflis, losing carpets in Batum.
Oh yeah, it was up and down. Shows the real struggles involved in getting and keeping that independence he needed. Not a smooth ride.
Yet he always seemed to bounce back. Caviar, selling a ship in Constantinople, he had a knack.
Definitely persistent, a keen eye for an opportunity and the drive to make it happen, even after setbacks.
Moving to France, the Chateau du Prieuré that brought new financial strains.
Huge costs involved in setting up the institute. The Prieuré meant big expenses, constant pressure to find funding, manage things.
Even his nightlife in Montmartre caused gossip.
Yeah, shows how easily people misunderstand or judge when someone acts outside the norm. His reasons were likely tied to his work observing people.
Then his mother arrives with that valuable brooch. A crucial moment.
Talk about timing. A lifeline when things were really tight. Shows how support can come from unexpected places. He knew its value and how to use it.
And Lady L's offer to fund his great work. That must have been huge.
Absolutely. That kind of major philanthropic backing from someone who believed in the work was essential for stability, allowing him to focus.
The irony of his accident stopping him going to America, but maybe helping the Institute financially.
Life's strange twists, right? Even a bad event might have unforeseen positive side effects, solidifying things unexpectedly.
He eventually went back to business, antiques, to shore things up further.
Shows his pragmatism. He knew financial security wasn't a one-time fix. It needed ongoing effort to support his long-term goals, his main work.
And that final note about the 6 years spent remembering himself while writing.
That emphasizes the intense inner work behind it all. Self-reflection, discipline. That was the foundation for everything he produced externally.
Wow. Okay, that's an incredible amount of ground covered from just those excerpts. If we try to pull it all together, what are the main takeaways for someone listening?
Well, a few big themes really stand out, I think. First, that sharp critique of modern civilization, especially how its culture, its literature, might numb our feelings, our instincts.
Okay, the critique. What else?
Then there's his clear admiration for people with inner strength, real wisdom, something beyond the superficial. His father, the dervish, others.
People connected to something deeper.
Exactly. And third, the huge emphasis on direct experience. Learning by doing, through conscious effort, not just reading about things.
Experience over theory.
And finally, just the sheer unpredictability of life's journey, the unexpected turns, the challenges, the serendipity, it's woven all through these stories.
It really is striking how it all connects ancient myths, business deals, spiritual quests, simple encounters. It builds this very layered picture.
It does. A view that values integrating everything inner and outer life, seeking real understanding, living with intention.
So for everyone listening, maybe the final thought is, how do the author's concerns about culture, about communication, about that balance between intellect, feeling, instinct, how does that resonate now in our world?
Yeah, in this digital age especially.
And what qualities strike you as truly remarkable in people today? Are they similar to what he valued? It's worth thinking about the different deep dives within this one deep dive and what really stands out for you.
Lots to mull over.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.